Nanny is trapped in mansion with widowed CEO billionaire during hurricane. But he didn't expect it. Hello, beloved Alcot Stories family. Welcome to another captivating journey of heart, emotion, and unforgettable moments. I am your storyteller, Alcot Brian, and I'm beyond thrilled to take you on this adventure today. The story you're about to experience is one filled with love, healing, and a storm that tested the very core of its characters. But, as you know, every storm passes, and in the end, it's the love we have for each other that brings us home. So, settle in, let the world fade away, and join me as we dive into a world where hearts are healed and love triumphs. I promise you, this is a story you don't want to miss. Before we begin, I'd like to say a special prayer for each of you, our beautiful Alcot Stories family. May your hearts always find peace, your paths be guided with light, and your days be filled with love and joy. May you always be surrounded by warmth, kindness, and the strength to overcome any storm that may come your way. We are one big family here, and I pray that every moment you spend with us brings you comfort, inspiration, and a deep sense of connection. Thank you for being here with us. You are truly loved, and we are forever grateful for your loyalty and your presence. And now, my dear friends, I ask you to stay with me till the very end of this story. Every twist, every turn, every moment has a purpose. It's a journey that needs to be experienced fully, for only then can you truly understand the magic that comes with the completion of this tale. So, don't rush, savor every second of the story, and let it touch your heart. I promise it will be worth every moment. Together, let's make this a beautiful experience. Enjoy the story, and thank you for being a part of the Alcot Stories family. Brielle Carter clutched the strap of her leather bag as the iron gates of the night estate creaked open, revealing vast, sweeping drive that curved through manicured lawns and lush gardens toward a mansion that looked carved out of a dream, or perhaps a lonely nightmare. The structure sat like a silent sentinel on the rugged coastal cliffs, where waves crashed far below with the endless roar of the ocean, and the grey clouds above swirled in slow, ominous spirals, as if even the sky hesitated to shine its light on this place. And yet Brielle, with her warm brown eyes glinting with resolve and her graceful figure moving with a dancer's poise, kept walking up the path, every step crunching the tiny stones beneath her boots, feeling the weight of her new beginning pressing into her chest, but also sensing a strange, prickling unease. A flutter of warning she quickly pushed aside, because opportunity had knocked, and she could not afford to let her fears answer the door. The mansion, with its towering stone pillars and wide-arched windows, looked both breathtakingly beautiful and heartbreakingly sad, much like the man she was about to meet, though she didn't know it yet. And as she reached the heavy oak doors, polished to a high sheen, yet ancient in design, her heart pounded in rhythm with the waves below, steady and fierce, announcing her arrival as a gust of sea-salted wind blew strands of her sleek black hair across her face. Before she could raise her hand to knock, the door swung open to reveal a butler in a sharp black suit who said not a word, but merely stepped aside, his face impassive as if carved from stone. And Brielle, swallowing hard, stepped inside, where the air smelled faintly of leather-bound books, beeswax polish, and something older, like memories tucked into the very walls. She was led through grand halls adorned with oil paintings and crystal chandeliers, her footsteps echoing off marble floors as she tried to keep her nerves hidden behind a mask of calm professionalism, though inside her mind was a whirlwind of doubts and questions. And finally they stopped before a pair of double doors that swung inward without ceremony, revealing a cavernous office bathed in the muted silver light filtering through tall windows. And there he stood, Alexander Knight, with his broad shoulders clad in a crisp white shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong, tanned forearms, his jawline dusted with the barest hint of stubble, his golden hair tousled like he'd just run frustrated fingers through it. But it was his eyes that froze Brielle in place, the bluest she had ever seen, clear and piercing as a winter sky, and they locked onto her with a force that made her breath hitch, not because he was merely handsome, though he was achingly so, but because there was something broken in his gaze, something guarded and dangerous and deeply, profoundly lonely. For a heartbeat too long, they stared at each other, and Brielle felt the faintest ripple of tension slice through the room. Not hostile exactly, but charged, alive, and raw. And then Alexander's mouth pressed into a tight line, and he gestured brusquely to the chair across from his enormous mahogany desk, his voice low and smooth, yet carrying the unmistakable edge of a man who had forgotten how to trust. "Miss Carter, I presume," he said, and Brielle, gathering her courage like a cloak around her shoulders, nodded and took her seat, noticing the way his gaze flickered briefly down her figure, not lasciviously, but almost as if sizing up whether she was strong enough to weather the storm he knew she was stepping into. And as they exchanged stiff pleasantries, her resume, her experience, her credentials as a caretaker, Brielle couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a job interview. It was a test, a gauntlet she must walk without faltering. Because there was a darkness here, a sorrow that clung to the air like mist. And when Alexander finally said she could meet Lily, his 5-year-old daughter, there was the faintest softening in his tone, almost imperceptible. But Brielle caught it and tucked it away, a clue to the man he might still be beneath the ice. Following him through a maze of hallways, she noticed how the house, despite its grandeur, felt strangely hollow, the walls too pristine, the air too quiet. And when they entered a sun-drenched nursery where a tiny girl sat silently at a table, coloring a picture, Brielle's heart melted at the sight, because Lily had her father's striking eyes, but her late mother's golden hair, and there was an innocence about her that felt heartbreakingly fragile, like a soap bubble about to burst. And as Brielle knelt beside her and introduced herself with a warm smile, Lily looked up shyly, and in that instant, something unspoken passed between them, a connection that Brielle knew went beyond words, a silent promise that no matter what lay ahead, she would protect this child with everything she had. Behind her, she could feel Alexander watching, his gaze heavy, assessing, maybe even hoping, though he would never admit it. And when Lily reached out with small, trusting fingers to touch Brielle's hand, it was like the first crack in the walls that Alexander had built around himself, a hairline fracture that would one day split wide open. But for now, he merely cleared his throat and muttered something about showing Brielle to her quarters, his voice rougher than before. And as Brielle followed him down yet another winding hallway, she couldn't help but glance out the tall windows to the horizon, where dark clouds were beginning to gather, unnoticed but inevitable, much like the storm brewing between her and the brooding man striding ahead of her. And as she stepped into a beautiful but lonely guest room and set her bag down with a soft sigh. Brielle had no idea that the life she had known was already slipping away, like sand through her fingers, and that soon, very soon, both she and Alexander Knight would be swept into a tempest far fiercer than the one gathering over the sea. A storm that would test their hearts, their pasts, and the fragile hope for something neither of them believed they deserved. Love. The next few days inside the Knight estate pass in a blur of routines, with Brielle navigating the mansion's labyrinthine hallways, adjusting to her role as both a caretaker and an observer, and always feeling the weight of the house's silence press down on her shoulders like a thick fog. The mansion, despite its grandiose beauty, feels like a mausoleum, and the chill in the air never seems to leave. Brielle notices it first in the long dining hall, where the windows, despite their size, do little to warm the space, and the ornate furniture, despite being stunningly crafted, seems to stand as monuments to a time when the house was full of life. There's an eerie stillness everywhere she goes, but it's Alexander, the widowed billionaire CEO, who seems to embody this coldness most of all. When they cross paths during her duties, he's distant, his features perpetually set in a hard, unreadable mask, and his eyes, those piercing, icy blue eyes, never soften, always carrying a weight of loss and sorrow so deep it seems to make the air around him heavier. Brielle can feel it in the tension that lingers between them whenever their gazes meet. His presence in the room is like a silent storm, one that never fully passes, always there, hovering over every interaction. She can't help but wonder what has frozen his heart, what kind of pain he's locked away that has turned him into a man incapable of warmth. Every now and then, she catches him staring at photographs of his late wife, framed and displayed in various parts of the house, as if he's unwilling to let go of her memory, as if the very act of looking at her face in those images is a kind of lifeline to a time when he was whole. Brielle knows better than to ask, though she's tempted. After all, how can she understand him if she doesn't understand the depths of his grief? Instead, she focuses on the task at hand, caring for Lily. The little girl has a quiet sweetness about her, a kind of innocence that draws Brielle in like a magnet. It doesn't take long for Brielle to notice how the child seems to gravitate toward her, her soft hands always seeking Brielle's touch, her bright eyes always searching for some kind of connection, and it breaks Brielle's heart to realize that the warmth the child seeks is something she hasn't received from her father in months, maybe years. Brielle's heart aches for Lily, a girl so small, so vulnerable, caught in the middle of her parents' broken world. One evening, as Brielle sits with Lily at the grand piano in the mansion's music room, she notices the girl's eyes drift toward the portrait of her mother on the wall. The picture shows a woman with a gentle smile and the same striking blue eyes as Alexander. For a moment, Lily's eyes seem to gloss over, as if the sight of the portrait brings up something she cannot express, something too painful to speak about. And then she turns to Brielle, her small voice barely a whisper. "Do you think she'll come back?" Lily asks, and it takes everything in Brielle not to break down in that moment. She gently strokes the girl's hair, her heart swelling with empathy. "No, sweetheart," Brielle says softly, "but your dad loves you, and he's always here for you, even if it doesn't always feel that way." Brielle's words are meant to comfort, but she knows they're hollow. She's seen Alexander, the way his face falls when Lily calls for her mother, the way he withdraws into himself as if he's drowning in a sea of guilt and regret. He seems like a man trapped in the past, unable to let go of a love lost. And Brielle realizes with a sharp, painful clarity that he may never move on, not completely. The air in the mansion grows heavier still as the days pass, and Brielle starts to feel the storm brewing outside, mirroring the storm inside. The weather changes gradually, and Brielle can feel the winds picking up, but it's only when she sees Alexander standing alone on the balcony, staring out at the horizon, that she realizes how much the coming hurricane is affecting him too. His posture is stiff, his jaw clenched, his eyes narrowed as he watches the storm clouds gather over the ocean, the sky darkening in anticipation of the tempest that will soon strike. Brielle feels an inexplicable tug in her chest as she watches him, as if the raw emotion in his stance calls to her in some way she can't fully understand. She's seen him like this before, remote, detached, and wrapped up in his grief. There's something about the storm that seems to crack the thin veneer of control he has over his emotions, as if the chaos outside mirrors the chaos inside his heart. Brielle hesitates for a moment, unsure whether she should approach, but before she can decide, Alexander turns abruptly and retreats back into the house, his face like stone once again. For a moment, Brielle wonders if he even knows she's been watching, but she doesn't dwell on it. Instead, she shifts her focus to the hurricane that's fast approaching, its winds howling and churning in the distance. Brielle feels an eerie sense of foreboding as she watches the storm build. But even as the weather worsens, it feels like the storm is not just in the sky, but in the very air between her and Alexander, an invisible tension that neither of them can escape. She tries to put the unease out of her mind, focusing instead on Lily, who clings to Brielle more tightly with each passing day. There's something in the way the child holds on to her, something almost desperate, as if she knows something is about to change. Brielle can't shake the feeling that the hurricane is only a prelude to something much bigger, something that will bring both her and Alexander face to face with the truths they've been avoiding for so long. The storm outside might be raging, but the real storm is only just beginning, and it will reshape everything between them. Little does Brielle know, the wind that howls outside is nothing compared to the whirlwind of emotions and revelations that will soon engulf her and Alexander. The coldness in the mansion is not just a reflection of the physical temperature, it's a symptom of the emotional frost that has gripped Alexander's heart, a frost that Brielle has unwittingly stepped into, and it will take more than just the passing of a storm to melt it. The storm arrives without warning, its fury much stronger than anyone had anticipated. The once calm, open skies turn a menacing shade of grey, and the winds howl like a chorus of angry spirits, slamming into the mansion's stone walls with a violence that rattles the windows. Brielle watches from the kitchen window as the first few raindrops splatter against the glass, quickly turning into a torrential downpour that blurs the world outside into a swirl of motion and sound. The gusts whip the trees violently, bending them nearly to the ground as the sea below churns in response, waves crashing against the jagged rocks with deafening force. Brielle feels a cold shiver run down her spine, an instinctive sense of danger deep within her. As the storm intensifies, the staff begins to prepare for evacuation, their hurried footsteps echoing through the halls as they gather their things, trying to make their way out before the roads become impassable. Brielle watches them leave, their expressions tight with fear, their voices filled with panic as they hurry toward the shelter of their cars. But she doesn't follow. She's rooted in place, her heart heavy with the decision she's made. Her first and only priority is Lily. She can't leave the little girl alone in the chaos. The thought of her being trapped inside this monstrous house, abandoned and vulnerable, fills Brielle with dread. So she stands firm, watching as the last of the staff disappears down the long driveway, leaving her and Lily alone with the storm. She takes a deep breath, steeling herself for what's to come, knowing that staying here might be dangerous, but it's the only choice she can make. As the hours pass, the house grows quieter, the staff gone, the mansion now a vast empty shell filled only with the sound of the storm outside. Brielle hurries to check on Lily, who is playing with her dolls in the nursery, her tiny face furrowed in concentration as she arranges them on the floor. The sight of the child, so innocent and unaware of the true danger surrounding them, makes Brielle's heart ache. She crouches beside her, offering a smile that she hopes is reassuring. But even Brielle can feel the tension building in the air, thick and oppressive. "Lily, sweetheart," she says softly. "We need to go downstairs and make sure we're safe, okay? We're going to stay together, and we'll be all right." Lily looks up at her with wide eyes, her little hands clutching her doll tightly. "Will Daddy be okay?" she asks, her voice trembling slightly. Brielle's heart catches in her throat, but she nods. "Yes, honey. Daddy will be fine, and we're all going to stay together. Don't worry." But as Brielle leads Lily down the grand staircase, her own anxiety grows. The storm outside rages harder now, the wind howling through the cracks in the windows, rattling the panes as if the house itself is fighting to keep them inside. Brielle can feel the weight of the walls around them, closing in as if the mansion itself is aware of the impending chaos. Alexander has already retreated into his office, and Brielle doesn't have the heart to intrude on his solitude. She knows that he must be as worried as she is, but the man has built walls so high around himself that reaching him feels like trying to break through steel. Still, she can't help but feel a quiet concern for him. He's so cold, so distant, like a man who has resigned himself to living in the shadow of his grief forever. But she doesn't have time to dwell on that. The wind outside howls louder, and Brielle makes her way into the grand living room, where she and Lily huddle together on the plush sofas wrapped in blankets. The power flickers once, twice, and then dies completely, leaving them in darkness. Brielle lights a few candles, their flickering flames casting long shadows on the walls, making the mansion seem even more isolated, more alien. In the dim light, she can just make out the outline of Lily's face, her eyes wide with unease as she clings to Brielle. Brielle pulls her closer, wrapping her arms protectively around the child, feeling the weight of the moment settle over them both. For the first time, she realizes how fragile their situation truly is. The storm is no longer something outside, something distant. It's here, surrounding them, filling every corner of the house with its fierce energy. The howling winds seem to mock them, to remind them that they are trapped here, with no way out, no escape from the chaos. As the night drags on, the storm intensifies, and Brielle can hear the sound of the rain pounding against the windows with such force that it feels like the house itself will be torn apart. The candles flicker and sway, their light casting strange, flickering shadows on the walls, and the air grows colder with each passing minute. Brielle can feel the pressure building inside her chest, the weight of the fear that has begun to settle over her. She can't ignore it any longer. She needs to know that Alexander is okay. She needs to make sure that they're all safe. Her thoughts race, and she can't shake the feeling that something is off. There's a strange tension in the air, a silent barrier between her and Alexander that she doesn't know how to cross. She stands up, brushing the blanket off her shoulders and straightening her clothes. She can't just sit here, helpless, while the storm outside threatens to tear everything apart. Brielle walks towards the hallway, her footsteps slow and cautious, her heart thudding in her chest as she approaches the door to Alexander's office. She hesitates for a moment, unsure of what to expect, but then she takes a deep breath and knocks softly. The sound of her knuckles against the wood feels unnervingly loud in the silence that surrounds them. A moment passes before the door creaks open, revealing Alexander standing inside, his features tense, his posture rigid. He looks at her without speaking, his eyes narrowing slightly, and for a moment there's only the sound of the storm, the furious wind and rain hammering against the mansion like a warning. Brielle opens her mouth to speak, but before she can say anything, Alexander steps aside, gesturing for her to enter. "It's worse than they said," he says, his voice low, as if the words themselves are heavy. "The roads are flooded. We're cut off from the outside world." Brielle nods, feeling the weight of his words settle in her stomach. They're truly trapped here, with no way to leave, no way to reach anyone for help. But then Alexander says something that surprises her. "We'll have to stay here until the storm passes," he says, his eyes meeting hers for the first time, with something that almost resembles uncertainty. There's no other choice. Brielle looks at him, her heart racing. There's something in his expression that she hasn't seen before, a vulnerability, a rawness, a crack in the armor that he's built around himself. In that moment, she realizes that she's not alone in this. He's just as trapped as she is, as vulnerable, as afraid. And in that instant, something shifts between them, an unspoken understanding, a silent acknowledgement that they're in this together. No longer just two strangers in a cold mansion, but two people caught in the same storm, both of them seeking something they can't quite name. The winds outside howl louder, the storm rages on, but inside the mansion, in the dim candlelight, Brielle and Alexander stand facing each other, their lives forever changed by the forces that have brought them together, and the walls that have stood between them start to come down, slowly, inch by inch, as the storm rages on. The hurricane rages on outside, but inside the mansion, the tension between Brielle and Alexander begins to shift, subtly at first, then with an undeniable force. The walls that had once separated them, walls built from grief, silence, and emotional isolation, begin to crack under the pressure of the storm and the intense proximity forced upon them by the circumstances. As the days drag on, the flickering candlelight in the living room becomes their only source of comfort, its warm glow contrasting with the biting cold of the wind howling outside. Brielle finds herself growing increasingly aware of the man sitting across from her, his broad shoulders stiff, his jaw clenched. But there's something more in the way he holds himself now. His icy facade, so well constructed and guarded, is beginning to show signs of wear, and Brielle can't help but notice the vulnerability beneath, like a soft ripple in a still pond. He's no longer the aloof, distant billionaire CEO, but a man trapped in his own fortress of grief, and she realizes with startling clarity that it is the storm itself, the very thing that's kept them isolated, that is pushing them toward each other. She watches as he shifts uneasily in his chair, his gaze frequently drifting toward the windows, as if the storm itself is the only thing that keeps him anchored to the present. The storm outside mirrors the storm inside him, and Brielle wonders how long he's been carrying the weight of this silence, of this loneliness. After a while, Alexander speaks, his voice low, almost hesitant. "It's strange," he murmurs, eyes not quite meeting hers. "I never thought I'd be stuck in this house with someone who doesn't belong here." Brielle raises an eyebrow, unsure if she's offended or curious, but his words hang in the air, unspoken layers of meaning swirling between them. "I don't belong here," she asks, her voice soft but steady, though she feels a pang of uncertainty. "And where exactly do you think I belong, Mr. Knight?" The way she says his name is different now, less formal, more personal, like a quiet challenge. Alexander pauses, his brow furrowing slightly, and then he shakes his head, as if trying to clear some deep, tangled thought. "Not here," he repeats, quieter this time. "Not in this house. I never wanted this life. I never wanted any of this." The final words seem to fall out of him, barely audible, and for the first time, Brielle sees the cracks in his armor. It's not just the coldness that's begun to melt, but the grief, the raw, unhealed wound of his wife's death, and Brielle realizes just how much of a stranger he's become to himself. She watches him, studying the intensity in his blue eyes, the tension in his shoulders. The billionaire CEO, with his calculated, cold demeanor, is just a man in pain, and Brielle feels a deep, instinctive sympathy for him, a connection she hadn't expected. But this moment of vulnerability quickly fades as Alexander shifts uneasily, returning to his guarded silence. Brielle takes a deep breath, trying to shake off the weight of his words. She doesn't want to press him, but she can't ignore the small flicker of curiosity. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to," she says softly. "But I do think you need to talk to someone. You're carrying so much." Brielle's voice trails off, unsure of how to continue, unsure of how much of his pain she can bear to see. Alexander glances at her then, and for a fleeting moment, there's a flash of something in his eyes, something deep and intense, something that tells Brielle he is listening, really listening, for the first time. "You think I'm carrying too much?" he asks, his voice tinged with something like disbelief, yet with a hint of curiosity. Brielle nods slowly, her gaze unwavering. "I do. But you're not alone in this. You don't have to carry it all by yourself." Her words hang in the air between them, weighty and vulnerable. Alexander's expression softens, just a little, and Brielle feels an unexpected rush of warmth toward him. Compassion, maybe, or something more. But before either of them can say anything else, Lily's small voice breaks the silence, calling from the doorway. "Brielle, can we talk?" Brielle smiles softly at the little girl, nodding as she rises to her feet. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's go." As she walks toward Lily, she can feel Alexander's gaze on her back, but she doesn't turn around. Something shifts in her as she moves away from him. Something deeper, more certain. For the first time since arriving in this cold mansion, Brielle realizes that there is more to Alexander than the cold, distant man she's seen up until now. There's a depth to him, a vulnerability that he's been hiding for so long. And she knows that the storm, both inside and outside the house, is the catalyst that's finally starting to bring it to the surface. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Brielle returns to the living room, a quiet sense of determination settling over her. She's not sure what's happening between her and Alexander, but the pull is undeniable. There's an electricity in the air, an unspoken tension that lingers long after the conversation ends. As the wind howls outside, Brielle and Alexander find themselves sitting on opposite sides of the room, yet both of them are aware of the closeness between them, the space that has never felt so charged. It's not just the storm, it's something deeper. As they sit in the silence, Brielle's thoughts turn inward, and for the first time she realizes that she, too, has been hiding parts of herself, parts of her dreams, parts of her past, things she's never shared with anyone, things she's kept buried for fear of rejection. She had come to the mansion to escape her own painful memories, to start fresh. But she had never expected that this cold, imposing man would be the one to make her feel something she hadn't in years. The attraction between them is simmering, building like the storm outside, and Brielle wonders how much longer they can avoid the inevitable. She feels it in the air. Electricity, attraction, something dangerous, but also something exhilarating. There's a heat in Alexander's gaze when their eyes meet again, something unspoken but undeniable. As the night deepens, the winds howl louder, but the silence between them grows more palpable, more intense, and Brielle knows that they are both teetering on the edge of something that could change everything between them. The cracks in Alexander's armor have only just begun to form, but Brielle knows that with each passing hour, the distance between them will continue to shrink, until all that remains is the undeniable pull that neither of them can escape. And the more they talk, the more they reveal to each other, the more they realize that what began as simple survival in the face of the storm is quickly becoming something far more complicated and far more dangerous. The storm outside continues to rage, but inside the mansion, the night feels unexpectedly still, as if the entire world has paused, holding its breath. The candlelight flickers softly, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls, and the only sound is the occasional crackle of the flames and the distant howling of the wind. Brielle is curled up in the library, reading a book to pass the time, when she hears a faint noise from the hallway, a soft scrape of wood against stone. She pauses, her curiosity piqued, and as she rises to her feet, she sees Alexander walking past, his tall figure framed by the door, his eyes searching the room like he's looking for something, or perhaps just something to do. His expression is unreadable, but there's a spark of something in his eyes, something that wasn't there before, a hint of excitement, or perhaps just a desire to break the monotony of the endless storm. "What is it?" Brielle asks, her voice soft, though there's a flicker of curiosity in her chest. He looks at her, his lips curling slightly into a half-smile. "I found something interesting in the attic," he says. "I thought you might like it." Brielle raises an eyebrow, intrigued. "What did you find?" He steps aside, revealing an old phonograph, a relic from another time, its brass horn gleaming faintly in the candlelight. Brielle's heart skips a beat at the sight. The old machine seems almost out of place in the modern mansion, a symbol of a simpler time. Yet it feels like a welcome escape from the storm's relentless fury. "A phonograph," Brielle says, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Where did you even find it?" Alexander steps closer, his eyes meeting hers, and there's a hint of mischief in his gaze, as if he's sharing a private secret. "It's been tucked away in the attic for years," he says. "I didn't even know it still worked." Brielle steps forward, her curiosity getting the better of her. "Well, we should give it a try, don't you think?" Alexander gives her a nod, and with a flick of his fingers, the phonograph comes to life, its soft, crackling hum filling the room. As the needle finds its groove, the first notes of a slow, melancholic waltz begin to play, and for a moment it's as if the storm outside fades into the background, swallowed by the music's gentle rhythm. Brielle smiles softly, the sound of the music lulling her into a sense of calm, a temporary escape from the tension and uncertainty that has gripped them for days. She turns to Alexander, her heart racing inexplicably at the idea of dancing in the grand hall, the storm outside forgotten, the world outside reduced to just the two of them in the glow of candlelight and soft music. "Shall we?" she asks, her voice breathy, almost playful. Alexander looks at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable, before he extends his hand toward her. "Why not?" His voice is low, his usual cool detachment softened by the music, and there's something in his eyes, something that's shifted between them, something electric. Brielle hesitates only for a moment before she places her hand in his, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, and then she follows him into the grand hall, where the music swirls around them like a dream. The chandeliers above cast a soft glow, and for a brief, magical moment, it feels like they're the only two people in the world. As they take their first step onto the polished floor, the music envelops them, guiding their movements, slow and steady at first as they move in time, with the rhythm. Brielle's breath catches in her throat as she feels the closeness between them, the space between their bodies shrinking with every step they take. Alexander's hand rests lightly on her waist, his touch gentle but firm, and Brielle feels the heat of his palm seeping through the fabric of her dress. For the first time since their initial meeting, there's no tension between them, no cold distance, just the warmth of their shared moment, the music and the storm outside creating a strange intimacy in the darkness. As the dance continues, Brielle can't help but notice how natural it feels, as if they've been dancing together for years, as if their bodies already know the rhythm of each other. The distance between them has narrowed to almost nothing, and Brielle feels her heart race in her chest. Alexander's blue eyes meet hers, and for a fleeting second, she sees something in his gaze, something that wasn't there before. It's an openness, a vulnerability, a spark of life that Brielle had thought long gone from him. His hand on her waist lingers longer than it should, his fingers tracing the delicate curve of her hip, and Brielle feels a shiver run through her, the electric tension between them undeniable. The music swells, rising to a crescendo, and in that moment, Alexander pulls her closer, his chest pressing against hers, their faces only inches apart. Brielle's breath hitches, her heart pounding in her ears as the world around them disappears, leaving only the sound of the music, the flicker of candlelight, and the warmth of his body so close to hers. Time seems to slow, and as they continue to dance, Brielle feels the heat between them intensify, something building beneath the surface, something neither of them is willing to acknowledge, at least not yet. For Alexander, it's a feeling he hasn't had in years, a sense of being alive, of being truly seen, not as the cold CEO or the grieving husband, but as a man who is sharing something real, something raw, with the woman in his arms. His past has locked him away in a cage of grief and regret, but as they sway together, the bars of that cage seem to melt away, if only for a brief, precious moment. Brielle feels it too. The way the distance between them has vanished, the way the air crackles with something that neither of them can ignore. She's acutely aware of the way his hand rests on her waist, of the way his body moves with hers, so fluid, so natural, as if they've always belonged together in this dance. It's dangerous, this feeling that pulses between them, like a thread pulling them closer, tempting them to acknowledge the attraction that simmers just below the surface. But for now, neither of them speaks. Neither of them breaks the fragile, perfect bubble they've created between themselves. They are both content to exist in the music, in the dance, in the silence that speaks volumes. As the song begins to fade, the last note lingering in the air, neither of them wants to let go. The room is still, save for the soft breath of the candles, and for a long moment they simply stand there, wrapped in each other's presence. Brielle's hand rests against Alexander's chest, and for the first time, in what feels like forever, she feels his heart beating beneath her fingertips. His hand lingers on her waist, and neither of them moves to break the spell they've created. The storm continues to rage outside, but inside, in the warmth of the candlelight and the fading music, there is only the two of them, connected, electric, alive in a way they haven't felt in years. And though neither of them speaks the words, they both know it's a moment they'll never forget. A moment where the cracks in Alexander's armor grew wider, and Brielle's heart began to open in ways she hadn't anticipated. The night after their dance, the storm outside intensifies, swirling with an almost unnatural force. Brielle can hear the howling winds pressing against the mansion's walls, but within the grand hall, the warmth of the candlelight and the lingering memory of the dance create a fragile sense of peace. She had felt something shift between her and Alexander, something undeniable, but still, there's an unspoken distance lingering in the air. Their connection is growing, but neither of them is willing to confront it fully. Not yet. Brielle is sitting in the library again, a book open in her lap, her thoughts drifting in and out of focus, when a sharp knock at the door startles her. It's the kind of knock that doesn't belong in this house, the kind that doesn't belong during a storm like this, and Brielle's heart skips a beat. The wind outside is fierce enough that the staff should have long been gone, and there's no reason for anyone to be at the door. Her instincts are on high alert, her eyes darting to the door, but she doesn't move, unsure of what to do. The knock comes again. Louder this time, more insistent. Brielle stands quickly, a sudden sense of unease rushing through her, her heart pounding in her chest. She steps cautiously toward the door, her hand on the handle, but before she can open it, she hears a voice. A man's voice, rough and strained, calling from the other side. "Please, let me in. I need shelter from the storm." Brielle hesitates, every nerve in her body on edge. She knows she shouldn't open the door to a stranger, especially not in a storm like this, not when they're so isolated. But the desperation in his voice is unmistakable, and she feels an inexplicable tug to help. Her hand hovers over the doorknob as she takes a deep breath, readying herself to make a decision. But before she can move, Alexander appears behind her, his presence imposing, his icy blue eyes scanning the door with a dangerous intensity. "Don't open it," he warns, his voice low and steady. But there's an edge to it that Brielle hasn't heard before. She turns to face him, her heart racing as she tries to gauge his reaction. "I was just going to—" "No," Alexander interrupts, his voice firm. "Stay away from the door." His tone brooks no argument, and Brielle feels a chill run down her spine. He's not just concerned about the storm. There's something more in his eyes, something dark and protective, like a switch has been flipped inside of him. Brielle steps back from the door, uncertainty flooding her, as she watches Alexander move quickly to the side of the room. In one fluid motion, he grabs a heavy, ornate walking stick that had been left by the fireplace, holding it with a grip that is both controlled and threatening. Brielle's pulse quickens. "What's going on, Alexander?" she asks, her voice laced with a mixture of confusion and fear. But before he can answer, the door shakes violently with another desperate knock, and then it's forced open, the wood splintering slightly under the pressure. The stranger barges in, his clothes drenched from the rain, his face wild and frantic as he stumbles inside the grand hall, gasping for breath. Brielle takes a step back, her heart hammering in her chest as she realizes just how dangerous the situation has become. The man is disheveled, his eyes wide with panic, and there's a strange, unsettling energy to him, something she can't quite place. "Please, I just need shelter," he begs, his voice hoarse. "The storm, it's not safe out there." Alexander doesn't flinch, his gaze hardening with cold intensity as he steps forward, his body tense, his stance protective. "I don't care what you think you need," Alexander says, his voice dangerously calm, yet laced with authority. "You're not welcome here." The stranger stares at him, confused for a moment. But then something flickers in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or perhaps something darker. And Brielle feels a sudden surge of tension in the room. Alexander's grip on the walking stick tightens, and Brielle notices the subtle shift in his posture, as if he's preparing for something. The stranger takes an unsteady step forward, and Brielle instinctively steps closer to Alexander, her breath catching in her throat. She doesn't know why, but she feels suddenly unsafe, like she's standing on the edge of something she can't control. The man's eyes dart between them, sizing them up, and then he takes another step forward. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he says, his voice growing more agitated. "I just need to get through the storm. Let me stay here, and I'll be gone by morning." But Alexander doesn't budge, his eyes never leaving the man. His body is a wall of muscle, tense and poised for anything. He's no longer the distant, cold billionaire Brielle thought she knew. He's a force to be reckoned with, a protector, and a man who has no qualms about taking action to defend what's his. "Leave," Alexander says, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Now." The stranger hesitates, and in that brief moment, Brielle catches a glimpse of something in the man's eyes, something that doesn't sit right. It's not just fear or panic. It's something darker, something that makes her skin crawl. Before she can react, the stranger takes another step forward, his hand moving toward his jacket as though reaching for something hidden. Alexander doesn't hesitate. In a flash, he steps forward, swinging the walking stick with practiced precision. The man staggers back, his hand flying up to block the blow. But it's too late. Alexander's strike is swift and powerful, knocking the stranger back toward the door. The man crashes into the wall, groaning in pain, but he doesn't get up immediately. Brielle watches in stunned silence, her heart racing as she processes the rapid turn of events. Alexander stands over the man, his body rigid, his eyes cold with fury and something else, something primal. "You've been warned," he says, his voice barely a whisper, but it carries with it a weight of finality. "Stay away from us." The stranger, now on the ground, looks up at Alexander with wide, fearful eyes, and for a moment, Brielle feels the air thick with tension. It's clear that this isn't just about shelter from the storm. It's about something much more dangerous, something far beyond the reach of a simple, helpless plea for help. The stranger stumbles to his feet, his expression now a mix of fear and anger. Without a word, he retreats back toward the door, his eyes never leaving Alexander, before he slams the door behind him. The sound of the storm outside rushes back in, but the weight of what just transpired hangs heavy in the air. Alexander exhales, his body still tense, but he doesn't look at Brielle. Instead, he walks toward the windows, looking out into the night as if watching for any sign of danger. Brielle stands there, rooted to the spot, her mind racing. What just happened? Who was that man? And why did Alexander react like that? For a long moment, neither of them speaks. Finally, Brielle takes a step toward him, her voice barely a whisper. "Who was he, Alexander?" He turns toward her, his eyes dark and unreadable. "I don't know," he says, his voice low. "But he won't be back." Brielle feels a shiver run through her. The storm outside is nothing compared to the storm inside the mansion now, and she realizes that this night has changed everything. She's no longer just a nanny in an isolated mansion with a grieving billionaire CEO. She's become part of a far more complicated, dangerous world, one where Alexander's hidden side has been revealed, and where the safety of everyone inside the mansion now depends on more than just the weather. The storm outside rages on, an unrelenting force that matches the chaos inside the mansion. The tension in the air is palpable, like a thunderstorm waiting to crack. Brielle stands frozen in place, her heart still pounding from the intruder's sudden appearance and the shocking turn of events that followed. She watches Alexander, his back turned toward her, his posture stiff, his gaze locked on the window, as if he's still trying to assess the danger, even though the stranger has long since fled. His broad shoulders rise and fall with each breath, his movements sharp, deliberate. Brielle feels the weight of what just happened hanging between them like an unspoken truth, something they can't ignore anymore. The adrenaline still pulses through her veins, and every part of her is heightened, acutely aware of the storm inside her own chest, just as intense as the one outside. It's like the air itself is charged, filled with the residue of danger, fear, and something else, something she can't quite name. For a long moment, neither of them speaks. The only sound in the room is the rhythmic beating of their hearts, the flickering of the candles, and the distant howling of the wind. The stillness is almost unbearable. Then, without warning, Alexander turns toward her, his movements swift and decisive. His eyes lock onto hers, dark with intensity, a fire that Brielle has never seen before. Before she can react, he steps forward, his hand reaching for her wrist with a sudden urgency that sends a shiver down her spine. In that moment, the world outside, the storm, the danger, the tension, disappears. There's nothing left but the two of them. His hand grips her wrist, pulling her toward him, and Brielle gasps, her breath caught in her throat, as he slams his lips against hers in a kiss that is both fierce and desperate. It's like a dam breaking, years of suppressed emotion crashing through in a single, reckless instant. Brielle's mind reels as she feels the intensity of the kiss. His lips on hers are firm, demanding, as though he's pouring all of his fear, frustration, and longing into that single moment. There's no tenderness, no gentleness in it, only raw, unfiltered emotion, a need that neither of them can deny. Her body responds instinctively, her hands reaching up to grasp the lapels of his jacket, pulling him closer, as if she too has been holding back something that can no longer be contained. The heat between them is explosive, and Brielle can feel the entire world narrowing to just the two of them, their lips locked in a kiss that feels as though it could burn everything in its path. It's reckless. It's wild. It's everything they've been hiding from for so long. As the kiss deepens, Brielle's head spins, her heart racing as the taste of him overwhelms her senses. The electricity between them is undeniable, a magnetic force pulling them closer until their bodies are pressed together, their chests rising and falling in sync. For a brief, fleeting moment, the world outside, the storm, the intruder, the fear, fades completely, and there's only the overwhelming heat and passion that pulses between them. But then, just as suddenly as it began, Alexander pulls away, his hands releasing her, his breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. He steps back, his eyes wide, a look of shock and horror crossing his features. Brielle stands frozen, her lips tingling, her chest still heaving with the remnants of the kiss. The space between them suddenly feels miles wide, as if an invisible chasm has opened up, and she can't breathe. Alexander runs a hand through his hair, his face drawn with conflict, and his eyes are clouded with guilt. "I shouldn't have done that," he mutters, his voice strained, almost as if the words themselves are tearing him apart. Brielle's heart clenches as she watches him, confusion swirling in her chest. She doesn't know what to say, doesn't know how to respond to this sudden shift in him. The kiss, so full of fire and need, has left her breathless. And yet now, she feels like an intruder in her own heart. Alexander's expression is full of turmoil, his jaw clenched, his gaze flickering between her and the ground. "I didn't mean to—" he starts, but his words trail off, and Brielle watches him, feeling the raw pain in his hesitation. She opens her mouth to speak, to try and bridge the growing distance between them, but she can't find the right words. She wants to reach for him, to pull him back into the warmth they shared just moments ago, but something holds her back, something in the way he looks at her, as though he's terrified. "I didn't mean to betray her," Alexander continues, his voice quieter now, tinged with guilt. "My late wife. I loved her so much, Brielle. His words falter, and the weight of his grief hangs in the air between them, thick and suffocating. Brielle's heart aches for him, for the man who has carried the weight of his past like a chain around his neck. She sees it now, the depth of his pain, the way he's been running from it all this time. And suddenly, She understands the conflict that's tearing him apart. He's not just pushing her away because of the kiss. He's pushing her away because he's terrified of forgetting, of moving on, of letting go of the memory of the woman he loved. Brielle steps forward slowly, her heart swelling with empathy, but also with a fierce determination. "Alexander," she says softly, her voice trembling, "you don't have to feel guilty. What happened between us? It wasn't a betrayal." Alexander looks at her, his blue eyes dark and conflicted, and she sees the internal battle raging inside him. "It feels like it," he whispers, his voice raw. "I can't let go of her. I can't just forget her." Brielle takes a deep breath, her own feelings swirling in a complex mix of compassion and longing. She reaches out to him, her hand gently touching his arm, grounding him, offering him something real, something that doesn't carry the weight of guilt. "You're not forgetting her, Alexander," she says, her voice steady. "Loving again doesn't erase the love you had. It's not about replacing her. It's about moving forward." For a long moment, Alexander stands still, his body rigid, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he places his hand over hers, his grip gentle but firm. His eyes search hers for a long time, as though trying to understand the truth of her words, to convince himself that it's okay to let go of the guilt, to stop running from the possibility of something new. The storm outside howls louder, the wind banging against the windows as if it, too, is trying to make its voice heard in the silence between them. And in that silence, something shifts. The space between them, once so filled with uncertainty and fear, begins to fill with something else, something quieter, gentler, but just as powerful. The storm outside may still be raging, but the storm inside Alexander, the one that's kept him locked away for so long, begins to calm, just a little. It's not gone, not yet, but it's no longer the only thing he feels. Brielle stands there, heart in her throat, hand still resting on his arm, offering him her warmth, her understanding, and her own heart. She doesn't know what the future holds, but in this moment, she knows that they've crossed a line, one that neither of them can uncross. Whatever happens next, whatever challenges they'll face, they can face them together. The days that follow are heavy with unspoken words and fractured glances. The mansion, once full of warmth and the promise of something new, now feels like a cold, distant place. A place where Brielle no longer knows where she stands. The kiss still lingers in her mind, a reminder of the heat and passion that had almost consumed them both. But it also feels like a betrayal in itself. Alexander's rejection, his sudden withdrawal after that fiery moment, has shaken her to her core. It isn't just the kiss that haunts her, it's the distance that has crept in between them since then. She can't shake the feeling that she's somehow to blame for what happened, that she's the cause of this emotional storm that's taken hold of both of them. Every time she looks at Alexander, she sees the coldness in his eyes that wasn't there before. She can't understand why he pulled away, why he rejected what seemed like the beginning of something beautiful. The mansion, with its dark, looming walls and endless rooms, feels even more isolating now, as if it's closing in on her. The nights are the worst. Brielle lies awake in the guest room, staring up at the ceiling, her heart heavy with confusion and hurt. She wonders if she ever really belonged in this world, a world of wealth, of loss, of unspoken rules and boundaries she'll never fully understand. She came here to take care of Lily, to be a steady presence in the little girl's life. But somewhere along the way, things got complicated. She starts to question whether she's capable of navigating this complicated web of emotions that now exists between her and Alexander. Could it have been a mistake to allow herself to feel anything for him? Could it have been foolish to believe that someone like her, a woman from a different world, could ever truly fit into his? Brielle feels the sharp sting of insecurity settling in her chest, a weight that's harder to bear than the physical exhaustion from long days spent caring for Lily. She starts to withdraw, retreating emotionally, hiding behind a mask of indifference that she hopes will protect her from further pain. She becomes distant with both Alexander and Lily, unable to shake the feeling that she's out of place. The conversations between her and Alexander become stilted, forced even, with awkward silences stretching between them. He no longer looks at her the same way, and it tears at her heart. She's not sure what happened, but whatever connection they had seems to have shattered, leaving her with a sense of loss that she can't explain. She tries to go about her days with a sense of normalcy, playing with Lily, taking care of the house, but her mind is always somewhere else, always drifting back to that moment, that kiss, and the way Alexander pushed her away. Her doubts are consuming her, and she can't shake the feeling that he never wanted her in the first place. She tells herself it's better this way, that it's safer to keep her heart guarded, to avoid getting tangled up in a world that's not meant for her. Meanwhile, Alexander is a man at war with himself. He walks the halls of his mansion with a weight he can't escape, a dark cloud that follows him wherever he goes. The memory of that kiss haunts him, just as much as it haunts Brielle. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees her, her soft lips, her dark eyes, her body pressed against his in a moment of shared vulnerability. But it wasn't just the kiss that shook him. It was what came after. The guilt, the fear, the intense, suffocating fear that gripped him when he pulled away from her. He doesn't know how to reconcile the man he was before the tragedy of losing his wife with the man he feels himself becoming now. A man who might love again. He'd never thought that he would ever feel this way about anyone other than his late wife. He's never been able to let go of her, never been able to move on from the pain that still clings to him, years after her death. And yet, here he is, unable to fight the pull he feels toward Brielle. She's different from anyone he's ever known, strong, compassionate, and unapologetically herself. She's been a balm to his broken heart, a presence that has slowly brought light back into his life. But the moment she kissed him, everything shifted. He felt something stirring inside of him that he wasn't ready for, something he didn't know how to handle. He's terrified of losing her, of allowing himself to love again, only to have that love ripped away. He doesn't know if he's ready to open his heart to anyone, not when it's still so fragile, so raw from the scars of the past. Alexander spends his days in a daze, haunted by his emotions and the uncertainty of what to do next. He can't bear the thought of pushing Brielle away for good, but he's afraid of the alternative, of allowing himself to fall for her and then losing her, just like he lost his wife. He's caught in a vicious cycle of self-doubt and fear, unsure of how to move forward. His nights are filled with restless tossing and turning, his mind replaying the same thoughts over and over again. He wants to reach out to Brielle, to apologize for the way he pushed her away. But he doesn't know how. He doesn't know how to tell her that he's scared. Scared of the past, scared of the future, and scared of the way she's starting to make him feel things he hasn't felt in years. He knows he's hurt her, and the guilt eats at him like an unrelenting poison. He feels as though he's failed her, just as he failed his wife by not being able to save her. His mind is a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, and he can't find his way out. In the moments when he's alone, he wonders if he's even worthy of love, if he deserves to be happy again, or if he's forever bound by the ghosts of his past. As the days drag on, both Brielle and Alexander are trapped in their own emotional turmoil. Brielle struggles with her doubts, questioning her place in Alexander's world, while Alexander battles his own demons, torn between the need to protect his heart and the desire to give in to the love he's beginning to feel for her. The tension between them grows, and it's clear to both of them that something has to change. But neither of them knows how to bridge the gap that has formed between them, and neither knows if they can overcome the walls they've built around their hearts. The storm, it seems, is far from over. The tension between Brielle and Alexander has only intensified, each day drawing them further apart, yet neither of them able to ignore the heavy pull of the other. But then, one fateful morning, as the storm rages outside with renewed intensity, the fragile bond between them is put to the ultimate test. Brielle is woken early by the sound of Lily's weak, frightened voice calling out from the room next door. The little girl, usually full of life, sounds weak and trembling, her voice cracked with what can only be described as fear. Brielle's heart races as she rushes to her side, her thoughts already racing ahead. She finds Lily curled up in bed, her face flushed with fever, her tiny body trembling uncontrollably beneath the thick blankets. "Brielle," Lily whispers, her words barely audible, her eyes clouded with pain. Brielle's hands fly to Lily's forehead, and she feels the burning heat radiating from her small body. Panic grips Brielle's chest as she realizes the severity of the situation. Lily is in trouble. Serious trouble. Brielle quickly checks the room, realizing that there's no way to get the help they need from outside. The storm is too fierce, the wind's howling like an angry beast, and the mansion is isolated, cut off from the world. It's then that her thoughts turn to the old medical wing hidden deep within the mansion. Alexander had mentioned it once before, a place full of old supplies from the time when his family had lived in the mansion, long before the tragedy that had altered his life. She had never dared to go near it, afraid of what she might find or the memories it might stir for him. But now, there's no choice. She needs to find something, anything, that can help Lily. Brielle's breath quickens as she moves into action, trying to comfort Lily as best as she can. "I'll get you some medicine, sweetheart. Just hang on," she promises, though her voice trembles with fear. But Lily's condition continues to worsen, her breathing shallow, her eyes glazed over with feverish delirium. Desperation takes hold, and Brielle knows there's no time to waste. She needs to find Alexander. She rushes to his study, where she knows he's likely holed up, trying to deal with the storm and his own turmoil. When she bursts through the door, Alexander looks up from his papers, startled by the urgency in her tone. "It's Lily," Brielle says, her voice filled with panic. "She's sick, really sick. I need to find medicine." The old medical wing, remember? Can you help me?" Alexander's face shifts from one of surprise to one of immediate concern. His eyes flicker with the weight of the situation as he takes in Brielle's desperate expression. Without hesitation, he rises from his chair and follows her without a word. As they make their way through the dark, echoing halls of the mansion, the storm outside grows louder, as if it too senses the urgency. The winds scream against the windows, rattling the glass. But within the mansion, there's a tense silence, one filled with the weight of what's happening and what's at stake. Alexander leads the way, and Brielle follows closely behind, her heart racing in her chest. They reach the old medical wing at the back of the mansion, a forgotten corner that's almost hidden from view, its long unused doors creaking as they push them open. Inside, it's cold and dusty, a relic of the past. Shelves lined with old bottles and boxes sit in shadows, their labels worn and unreadable. The air smells faintly of decay and time lost. Brielle's hands shake as she grabs a lantern from the nearby shelf, lighting it and casting flickering shadows across the room. She scans the shelves frantically, hoping against hope that something, anything, can help Lily. Alexander moves to her side, his expression tense as he begins, searching the cabinets with equal desperation. The silence is oppressive, the only sound the soft rustle of papers and bottles being moved. Time seems to slow as Brielle's anxiety mounts. "Alexander," she says, her voice tight. "Please, we need to hurry. She's getting worse." He doesn't respond at first, his face drawn with concentration, his fingers moving quickly over the old bottles. Finally, he finds something. An old vial of medicine, its label faded but still legible enough to make out. "This should do it," he says, his voice low and filled with relief. Brielle's breath catches in her throat as she takes the vial from his hands, her heart pounding with a surge of hope. "Let's go," she says, turning quickly to head back to Lily's side. They move swiftly through the mansion, their footsteps echoing in the hall as they retrace their path. The storm rages louder now, as if the world itself is rebelling against their efforts. Brielle's mind is a whirlwind of thoughts, only one clear image in her mind. Lily, vulnerable and fragile, waiting for them. When they reach Lily's room, Brielle quickly administers the medicine, her hands trembling as she gently holds the little girl's head up. Alexander stands beside them, his face drawn with concern as he watches Brielle's every move. The storm outside seems to have intensified, the wind howling and rattling the windows with an almost violent force. Inside, the atmosphere is thick with tension, as if the entire mansion is holding its breath. Brielle watches Lily closely, her heart in her throat, willing the medicine to work, willing the fever to break. She takes Lily's small hand in hers, whispering reassurances as the girl's fever begins to subside slowly. For a long, agonizing moment, nothing happens. Then finally, Lily's breathing deepens, her body relaxing slightly. Brielle lets out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, her hand resting gently on Lily's forehead. "She's going to be okay," Brielle whispers, the words a quiet prayer. Alexander watches the exchange between them, his expression softening for the first time in days. The intense tension that has kept them at odds begins to dissolve, replaced by something deeper, a shared sense of purpose, of unity in the face of the danger that has threatened them. Alexander looks at Brielle, his blue eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and something else, something more vulnerable, more honest than he's allowed himself to feel in a long time. Brielle meets his gaze, her own eyes reflecting the same quiet relief. For a moment, there's nothing between them but the bond they've just forged in the fire of their shared struggle. They've fought together to save the one thing they both care about most in this moment, Lily, and in doing so, they've found something in each other they can't ignore. The storm outside continues to rage, but inside the mansion, the air feels lighter, as if the weight of the world has shifted, if only for a brief moment. Alexander reaches out, his hand brushing Brielle's in a silent acknowledgement of what they've just been through. They may have been pulled apart by their fears and doubts, but in this moment, as they stand together, they know something has changed between them. Whatever happens next, they've weathered the storm together, and that in itself is something neither of them can deny. The storm outside has been relentless for days, and tonight the heavens seem to have opened in a torrential downpour that beats against the windows with an unforgiving force. The mansion feels cold, even colder than usual, as though it too is holding its breath. Brielle, her emotions a whirlwind of frustration and heartache, can't stand it any longer. The silence between her and Alexander has grown unbearable, the tension so thick it seems to seep into the walls themselves. She can't keep pretending like everything is fine. She can't continue to act like she doesn't feel the ache in her heart every time she looks at him and sees the wall he's built between them. She's spent days waiting for him to make a move, to acknowledge what's been left unsaid between them. But he hasn't. He's been distant, consumed by his own grief and fear, and it's tearing her apart. She's not going to wait anymore. She can't. She needs to confront him, to force him to face the truth of what's happening between them, the truth of what's happening inside her. Brielle stands in front of the fireplace in the grand hall, her hands trembling as she stares into the dancing flames. She takes a deep breath, steeling herself for what's to come. Tonight, it's all or nothing. She won't let this go on any longer. She can't keep living in limbo. Her heart feels as though it's ready to burst with the weight of unspoken words, of feelings that she's held inside for far too long. The door creaks open behind her, and she doesn't need to turn around to know it's him. She can feel him there, in the air, a presence that's as familiar as her own heartbeat. Alexander. His voice is low, hesitant. Brielle, what's wrong? She doesn't answer at first. She just stands there, her back to him, staring into the fire. Her chest rises and falls with each breath, but it's almost as if she's holding her breath, waiting for something, anything, to give. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, she speaks, her voice trembling with the weight of everything she's kept inside. What's wrong, Alexander? What's wrong is that you've been shutting me out, pushing me away, and I can't stand it anymore. The words tumble out of her in a rush, as though they've been waiting for years to be said. I don't know what you're afraid of, but I can't keep pretending like I don't see it. I can't keep pretending like I'm okay with this silence, this distance between us. You're alive, Alexander, and so is your heart. You don't have to keep burying it, pushing it down, just because you're afraid of feeling again. Her voice cracks on the last words, and she feels the heat of tears burning behind her eyes, but she refuses to let them fall. Not yet. She turns to face him then, her eyes filled with a mixture of hurt, frustration, and desperation. You've been living in the past for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to be in the present. You've forgotten what it feels like to love, to open your heart to someone new. I can't make you do anything, Alexander, but I can't be a part of your life if you're going to keep me at arm's length. I can't be the one who has to hide her feelings, pretending like I don't care when every part of me is screaming for you to see me, to see us. There's a rawness in her voice now, an honesty she's never shown him before. For the first time, she's not hiding behind the mask of a nanny, the woman who was there to take care of Lily. She's Brielle Carter, the woman who has fallen in love with him, and she's not afraid to say it. The silence between them is deafening, and for a moment, Brielle wonders if he's even going to respond. But then, finally, Alexander steps forward. His eyes are searching hers, full of something she can't quite decipher. There's pain there. But there's something else, too. Something deep and vulnerable. Something that's breaking through the walls he's built around himself. Brielle. His voice is raw, almost a whisper, as if speaking the words out loud will make them too real. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. He trails off, his words faltering. Brielle can see the struggle in his eyes, the internal battle he's been fighting ever since she came into his life. He's torn between the ghosts of his past and the possibility of something new. She steps closer, her heart pounding in her chest. Alexander, I know you've been through hell. I know you lost her. And I know that pain is a part of you that will never fully go away. But you can't keep letting it control you. You can't keep living in the shadow of someone you've lost when there's a whole world out there waiting for you to live in it again. A world where you can feel joy and love and even hope. You have a chance at something real, something beautiful. But you have to choose it. You have to choose me. Or you can keep hiding in the past and let this slip away forever. The words hang in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Brielle's heart is in her throat as she waits for his response, the anticipation suffocating. Alexander's gaze never leaves hers as he stands there, his mind working furiously, trying to reconcile the man he once was with the man he's becoming. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, he speaks. His voice is low, barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can, Brielle. I don't know if I can let go of the past. I don't know if I'm strong enough to move on. The vulnerability in his voice cuts through her, and for a moment, Brielle feels her heart shatter all over again. She wants to reach out to him, to tell him that it's okay, that she understands. But she knows that this is something he has to do for himself. She can't fix him, no matter how much she wishes she could. You don't have to do it alone, she says softly, her voice filled with quiet determination. I'm here, Alexander. I'm not going anywhere. But you have to decide. You have to choose. Will you keep living in the shadows of your grief, or will you step into the light with me? I can't make this decision for you, but you have to make it before it's too late. There's another long silence between them, but this time it feels different. This time it's not filled with fear or uncertainty. This time it's filled with the possibility of something new. Alexander looks at her, his icy blue eyes filled with a quiet intensity. Slowly, almost hesitantly, he reaches out and takes her hand in his. It's a simple gesture, but in that moment it speaks volumes. It speaks of a man who is ready to take the first step into the future, even if it means leaving his past behind. "I don't know what the future holds," he says, his voice steady but raw. "But I'm willing to find out. With you." Brielle's heart skips a beat, and for the first time in what feels like forever, she smiles. A real smile, one that reaches her eyes and fills her heart with warmth. The storm rages outside, but in that moment, inside the mansion, the air feels lighter, freer, as though the weight of their pasts has finally been lifted. They stand there, hand in hand, not knowing exactly where the road ahead will take them, but knowing one thing for certain. They've chosen each other. And for the first time in a long time, it feels like the beginning of something new. The beginning of hope. The storm that has battered the mansion for what feels like an eternity is finally beginning to subside. The howling winds that had raged through the night have softened to a whisper, and the relentless rain has turned into a steady drizzle. The first light of dawn breaks over the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the battered coastline. Inside the mansion, everything feels different. The oppressive silence that had once hung between Brielle and Alexander has been replaced by something else. A quiet anticipation, a feeling that the storm outside is not the only one that's come to an end. Brielle has not slept, her mind too full of everything that has happened, too full of the moment she shared with Alexander last night. She's lying in bed, staring out the window, lost in thought, when she hears the creak of the door. She looks up to find Alexander standing in the doorway, looking as if he's walked through the storm itself, yet still somehow carrying an air of determination, of calmness that she's come to associate with him. His usually sharp features are softened, his eyes less guarded. The ice that had once defined him has melted, and Brielle can't help but notice how much lighter he seems. The tension between them, the weight that has been bearing down on both of them for so long, is finally starting to lift. But there's still something unsaid, something that hangs in the air, and Brielle knows that it's time to address it, to finally face the truth they've both been avoiding. She rises from the bed and moves toward the broken balcony, the one that had been shattered by the force of the hurricane's winds, now exposed to the elements, but still offering a magnificent view of the world beyond. The remnants of the storm can still be seen. The waves crashing against the cliffs below, the sky tinged with pink and orange as the sun begins to rise. Brielle steps out into the cool morning air, feeling the wet ground beneath her feet and the soft breeze brushing against her skin. The beauty of the moment is overwhelming, and for the first time since the storm began, Brielle feels at peace. As she gazes at the horizon, she's unaware that Alexander has followed her out onto the balcony, drawn to her like a moth to a flame. He stands a few feet away, watching her, his gaze filled with something that's impossible to miss. Admiration, longing, and something more. For a long moment, neither of them speaks. The only sound is the gentle hiss of the wind and the distant roar of the ocean. Finally, Alexander takes a step toward her, his voice low but clear, his words carrying the weight of everything he's been feeling. "Brielle," he begins, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't know how to say this, but I can't keep it inside anymore. I've fallen for you, hopelessly, deeply in love with you." Brielle turns to him, surprised by the raw honesty in his voice, her heart catching in her chest. She opens her mouth to speak, but he holds up a hand, stopping her before she can say anything. "Please," he continues, his voice thick with emotion. "Let me finish." He takes a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I never expected this. I never expected to feel this way again. When you came into my life, I was lost. I was consumed by grief, by fear, and by the idea that I could never love again. But you've changed everything. You brought light into my darkness. You showed me that I could still feel, still hope, still live. I'm not asking you to replace her," he says, his voice breaking slightly. "I'm asking you to be with me, because of who you are, because of the woman you've become in my life, because of the way you've made me believe that I'm capable of love again, that I'm capable of being happy again." Brielle's breath catches in her throat, her chest tightening as she listens to his words. She has heard him speak of his late wife, of the pain he's carried for so long. But hearing him say these words, hearing him acknowledge what they've both been avoiding, takes her breath away. Her heart swells with emotion, and for a moment she feels as though she's floating, as though the world around them has disappeared, leaving only the two of them standing in this beautiful quiet moment. Alexander steps even closer, his hands trembling as he reaches for hers. He takes her hands in his touch warm and steady. "Brielle," he whispers, "I know that I'm not perfect. I know that I've made mistakes, and I've hurt you by pushing you away. But I want you to know that I'm here, now, and I'm not going anywhere. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build a future with you, with Lily, and with everything we've come to be." Brielle's eyes well up with tears, but she doesn't let them fall. She can't speak, the emotions swirling inside her so overwhelming that they seem to choke her. Alexander watches her carefully, his gaze filled with a mixture of hope and fear. He seems to hold his breath, waiting for her to respond, waiting for her to make the decision that will change everything. And then, with a suddenness that takes him by surprise, Brielle steps forward, wrapping her arms around him, pulling him close. "Yes," she whispers, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Alexander, I love you. I've loved you for so long, and I want nothing more than to be with you." She feels him stiffen for a moment, and then, as if the weight of her words has finally broken through, he holds her tightly, his arms enveloping her like a protective shield. "I never thought this would happen," he says softly, his voice full of awe. "But I'm so glad it did." Brielle pulls back slightly to look at him, her heart racing as she gazes into his eyes. For a moment, it feels as though time has stopped, as though they're the only two people in the world. And then, with a trembling smile, Alexander drops to one knee, his hand still holding hers. "Brielle Carter," he says, his voice steady despite the emotion that fills it. "Will you marry me? Will you be my forever?" Tears spill from Brielle's eyes now, her heart overflowing with love and happiness. "Yes," she breathes, her voice shaking with joy. "Yes, Alexander, I will marry you." And in that moment, as the sun rises over the storm-tossed sea, as the first rays of light break through the dark clouds, they share a kiss that seals their promise. The storm has passed, both outside and in their hearts. A new chapter begins, one filled with hope, love, and the promise of a forever they'll share together. The days following their engagement are filled with a quiet, almost sacred happiness. The storm that had torn through the mansion, shaking it to its very foundations, had left behind of physical destruction. Shattered windows, broken balconies, and scattered debris. But the mansion, once a cold, empty place filled with haunting memories, now seemed to radiate warmth. It stood as a testament to their resilience, to the new life they were building together. The damage it had suffered only seemed to make it more beautiful in its imperfection, much like the journey they had taken to reach this moment. Brielle had never imagined that this mansion, with its towering walls and the weight of its past, could ever feel like home. Yet, with each passing day, it became more and more their home, a place where the love they shared could flourish, free from the ghosts of yesterday. Alexander, too, was beginning to transform. The man who had once been consumed by grief, frozen in the shadows of his past, was now stepping into the light. He was learning how to love again, how to open his heart, not just to Brielle, but to the possibility of a future. Every smile he shared with Brielle, every moment they spent together, was a reminder that the storm had passed, inside and out. But it wasn't just their love that was growing. It was also Lily, the little girl who had once been lost in the depths of sadness, clinging to Brielle for warmth and security, was now blossoming before their eyes. She was laughing more, playing freely, her eyes shining with the innocence and joy of childhood. It was as if the storm had swept away the shadows that had clouded her spirit, and in its wake a new light had emerged. Brielle had become her second mother in every sense of the word. Their bond, forged through the trials of the storm, had only deepened with time. Now, as the day of their wedding approaches, it feels as though everything is falling into place. The ceremony would be small, intimate, just a handful of people. But that was all they needed. Brielle had never dreamed of a grand, extravagant wedding. All she had ever wanted was to be surrounded by the people she loved, in a place that held meaning to them both. And so, the cliffside, where the ocean met the land in a wild, beautiful embrace, became the perfect setting for their vows. The wind had died down, the sun now casting its soft golden light across the sea, as if the world itself was preparing to witness the new chapter of their lives. Brielle stands at the edge of the cliff, gazing out at the horizon, feeling the breeze in her hair and the warmth of the sun on her skin. She feels a sense of peace, a sense of belonging she's never known before. The storm that had once felt so all-encompassing now seemed distant, a memory swallowed by the promise of this new beginning. She looks down at her wedding dress, simple but elegant, the soft fabric swaying with the wind. She is glowing, not from the physical beauty of the day, but from the light that has returned to her life, the love that has filled every corner of her heart. Behind her, Alexander waits. He is standing at the altar, his back to the ocean, watching her as she approaches. His icy blue eyes, which had once been so closed off, now shine with a warmth and openness that takes her breath away. He looks every bit the man who has found peace, who has found his way back to life. And she can see it in the way he looks at her, as if she is the only thing that matters. He smiles, and she feels her heart skip a beat. When they finally stand together, hand in hand, before their closest family and friends, it feels as though time itself has stopped. The world around them, the ocean, the cliffs, the sky above, seems to pause, holding its breath for this moment. Alexander's voice trembles slightly as he speaks his vows, but his words are clear, filled with sincerity and depth. Brielle, He begins, his voice strong despite the emotions that tug at him. I never thought I'd find love again. I never thought I'd find someone who could break through the walls I built so carefully around my heart. But then you came into my life, and you changed everything. You brought light into my darkness. You've shown me what it means to live again, to feel again. I promise to love you with everything I have, for as long as I live. His words are simple, but they carry the weight of everything they've been through, everything they've overcome together. Brielle's heart swells with emotion, and as she steps forward to speak her vows, she can't help but feel a sense of wonder. She has never believed in fairy tales, never thought that she would be the one to find this kind of love. But here she is, standing before the man she loves, in a place that feels like home, with a future stretching out before them. "Alexander," she says, her voice filled with emotion. "You've shown me what it means to truly live. You've given me a second chance at happiness, at love, and at a life I never thought possible. I promise to be by your side, through every storm, through every challenge. I will love you, not just in the easy moments, but in the hard ones too. I will be yours forever." Their vows are simple, but they are everything. And when they exchange rings, a symbol of their promise to one another, Brielle feels as though she is floating, as though the world is holding her up in this perfect moment. The ceremony ends with a kiss, soft, lingering, filled with all the love they've shared, and all the love they have yet to share. It is a kiss that marks the beginning of their new life together. Lily, who has been standing with them, hand in hand, beams as she watches them. She is their light, their joy, and their future. As they walk down the cliffside together, hand in hand, the sun setting behind them, Brielle knows that this is only the beginning. Their love has survived the storm. It has grown stronger, deeper, and more beautiful with each passing day. And now, as they step into this new chapter of their lives, Brielle knows one thing for sure. No matter what the future holds, they will face it together, as a family, as a united front, stronger than ever. The storm has passed. A new dawn has arrived.